Welcome to the Savvy Dentist Podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Savvy Dentist Podcast, the show where great dentistry meets great business. I'm super excited today because I'm catching up with an old mate, Grant Menzies, who is the CEO and second generation owner of Adina watches up in Brisbane. Adina watches have been around since 1971 and they've built a tremendous reputation for excellence in precision timekeeping. What I really love about this business is how they've been able to scale excellence. And so I'm super excited to be having a conversation with Grant today about that. Grant, mate, welcome to the show.
Jesse, it's great to be along with you, mate, and great to catch up. I couldn't agree with you more that it is nice to sort of chat with an old mate, especially about what we're pretty passionate about, which is our business, you know?
Yeah, well, mate, your business up in Queensland has been rocking along for generations now, decades, literally. And it's just gone from strength to strength. I read the business press. I see you guys getting these awards, these nominations for things. And every time I see that, I go, oh, mate, well done. That's terrific. So firstly, kudos to you guys for building such an awesome business and something that you must be tremendously proud of.
Oh, both Dad and myself are super proud of everything we achieve. I think we've always sort of just gone about doing what we do in a quiet sort of sense. And it's only been the last couple of years, I guess, that the media has sort of latched onto us, or I don't know if latched on is the right word, but it has actually sort of found us and become more interested in our business, I guess, off the back of being pretty much the last Australian watchmaker. There are a couple of other sort of smaller watch firms around that are doing some more handmade sort of manufacturing on a very small scale, but on a larger scale, there's definitely just us, you know. So it's not easy to do that all here in Australia. You know, it's the labour, content, etc. is there up there, but nothing makes me more proud than, you know, sitting on an aircraft or walking through a bar or something and you see someone wearing one of our watches and you sort of think to yourself, oh, you know, we made that. And you get a nice little sort of warm and fuzzy, which is kind of cool, you know.
And do you ever go up and tell them?
Sort of say, oh, I'm going from Adina. I said, oh, how your watch going? And there's who's this crazy man that's just come up to me and starts asking me about my watch? But or sometimes if you can get a conversation, Jesse, what I find is a lot of people will then start to tell you their whole life story. Oh, this watch, I got given it for my wedding anniversary or for my 21st, my dad gave it to me. I just love this watch. And then they go, why do you ask? So, well, I actually work at Adina, you know, we made that watch. Oh, is it made here in Australia? And he said, yeah, we made that and that. And that can lead on to a really nice conversation about our business and more about that watch and about that person in particular. It's really quite cool.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Each of those timepieces has a story because it's given for a certain occasion. It's handed down from one generation to the next. I mean, your timepieces are multi-generational timepieces, and that's terrific.
It certainly can be, mate. We're lucky enough to have a number of corporates that we're engaged with. Probably our biggest would be Horizon, the railway people. We make for them a pocket watch for the 40-year fellas, a wristwatch for the 20-year men and women. And we've made in such a way that it's designed to be sort of passed on and as a family heirloom of this person's time at Horizon.
That's really wonderful. So, mate, you have had the opportunity to literally grow up in the family business. And there was times when you might even physically or even definitely metaphorically sat at your dad's knee learning the art and craft of watchmaking, but equally understanding the ins and outs of business, because a business that's been around since 1971 has been through good economic times, the recessions, the booms, the busts, all that sort of stuff. I'd love to know what it is you learned growing up in the business from your dad.
I think the most powerful lesson that Dad's taught me is not to give up. He started our business by himself. That's an interesting story in itself. When Dad started the business, he basically sort of got talked into it by a mate. A mate of his was doing some importing, and he said to Dad, well, look, you go over to Switzerland, find some watches, we'll stick your name on them, I'll import them for him, and you can sell them, and if they break down, you can fix them. He met on the way to Switzerland to the World Fair back in the day. He met at a box manufacturer because you needed a box. If you're going to buy the whole watch, you need a box to go in it. So he met at this box factory, this guy, a Swiss guy, and the Swiss guy said to him, you know, Bob, you should actually make these yourself. Don't go and buy someone else's. I can send you in the right direction to get the movements and the hands. And this factory, not only did it make boxes, it also made cases and dials. So I was like, oh, well, I'll think about it. How many have I got to buy? And he said, you've got to buy 100 of one model. Dad's like, 100, that's so many, Anyway, so Dad went across to Switzerland and he met some different people and he decided to do some private labels. So at that particular time, you could just get your name put on a whole watch. But he came back to the factory on his way back home again. He said, yeah, I'm going to do it. So he bought 2 models, so 100 of each. And he made some red dials and green dials. It was the 70s, so you could get away with the psychedelic sort of colours. So he made these. But then the amazing thing, as a little, I was only a baby, so I don't remember him doing this, but I'd certainly remember as a toddler and everything. He would sit at home and he would actually put the watches together, and then he would go out to the shops. So I've literally just made these watches, fresh out of the oven type of thing. Here you go. And then, so in the day, he'd go selling. In the night, he would repair and then go out selling again. And then he tells me stories about short of cash in the business. So he'd run to one shop where he'd sold some watches and he said, look, if you're fixing up for those watches that I dropped off last week, I'll give you 10% off. Grab the check, take it straight to the bank, drop it in. Then that would finance the next sort of shipment of something, bands or whatever it was. So it was this robbing Peter to pay Paul situation and by himself doing everything. And I think we've got a team of, there's 16 up there now, so 12 watchmakers and 2 apprentices. And over that sort of team, we've grown into this sort of size, but there's always been these hurdles that have come along that you could have easily just thrown your hands in the air and go, you know what, this is way too hard. I just go get a job somewhere. And he just never did, And I think for me, that resonates that you just can't give up in business. Sometimes it's really tough. And we've got the added element of father and son working together. So that can add that little bit of toughness to having conversations around the dinner table. If I'm over at home, Mum will go, you boys aren't talking shop, and we'll start talking shop. And obviously, if we're not at work, we can really unload on one another. So there's that extra sort of, level of arm wrestling that goes on. But it still comes back to not giving up. And probably about 4 years ago, we probably had our biggest disruption where we both wanted the same thing. We both wanted to see our business succeed, but we were both wanting to do it in 2 different ways, and we couldn't quite get on the same kind of bench. And so it took us a while to really understand what each other was doing. And this is as social media was becoming a much bigger player in what we do. And he just, as a 74-year-old or 3-year-old, he kind of just didn't get it. But to his full credit, he gets it now, and is fully supportive of getting in behind that sort of thing. So it's once again that sort of never say die attitude that I think has been the strongest asset that he's developed in myself.
Yeah, and a willingness to give it a go and to learn new stuff, because at 73 taking on social media, mate, hats off. Well done. Jeez, that's fantastic.
He doesn't even have a mobile phone. So the other day I was driving between, and they're away on holidays at the moment, and I was driving between Ayr and Bowen up in North Queensland to visit some of our clients. And I see my phone ring. It's my sister, and she's on holidays with mum and dad at the moment. I was like, what would she be ringing? And it was on Messenger, so it's coming in over the internet. And here I am in the middle of nowhere in North Queensland. I picked up the phone and Dad's like, how are things going? I said, Dad, you're ringing me on the internet. And he goes, yeah, I know. It's cool, isn't it? so yeah, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for him. And I think I had a smile on my face for the rest of the afternoon thinking about him using the internet to give me a ring,
Oh, that's fantastic. My dad's discovered Messenger too, mate. And I tell you, my Facebook Messenger is slammed with music video clips. Dad's discovered YouTube and Messenger at the same time. I can cut and paste the link and send it to Jess. And hey, why don't I send him 10? Wait for it, mate. You'll be getting plenty soon.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, mate, when it came through when he rang the other day. Very, very funny. And I think that sort of resonates in our business. It's that continual willingness to grab new things. Like the watch industry, it's very traditional in a lot of ways, but we've had smartwatches come on the scene, and then we've had to decide whether we get involved in that sort of thing. We've never traditionally done it. And at this point, you never say never, but for us, smartwatches is not somewhere we want to be. But there's always been a technology offering. I remember starting over at school there, and James Prentice, he had this Casio watch with a calculator on it. And I was like sitting next to him. I still had a wind-up watch, so he was like this rock star, and here I am winding my watch every day. But there's always been that tech offering, and there always will be. But for us, we want to make a traditional timepiece that looks great, that works well, that has good reliability and functionality, but also has the ability to be repaired. And that's quite core to our business, because coming back to what we were talking about, sentiment and intrinsic value, if someone does get a watch for their 21st or whatever and they break the glass, we'd like to think that we've got the ability to repair that watch and actually have the parts on hand,
Yeah, so mate, that's fantastic. There's a couple little threads of the conversation I'd like to just pick up and run with, mate. And the first of those threads is, I suppose, working with your dad, because did you always know that you were going to go into the family business? Was that like a fait accompli, or was that a conscious decision, or could it have gone either way? How did it go?
When I finished at school, I ended up even though I'd spent every school holidays working there and you had to make your pocket money somehow, what happened was I came back from traveling and living overseas, and I wanted to get a job as a sales rep. I thought I love working with people and I love traveling, so it felt like a pretty good mix and a fit for me. And I said to Dad exactly that, and he said, "Well, look, I've never asked you to come into the business, but now if you're looking for a rep's job, I've got a rep's job going. You'd be perfectly suited to it. But the thing that would make it even better if you did come right now, there's lots of sons and daughters coming into their family businesses right now, and you can relate exactly with them about their struggles with their mums and dads, and they can want to have their influence on their business, and you want to have an influence in our business. So you can go along and hopefully meet with these people and grow our business at the same time as growing their business." And that's what kind of happened. I went out on the road, and back in the mid-90s when I joined Dad, we were very much had a very strong Queensland footprint, and we probably had a demarcation about as far as Coffs Harbour, Armidale, Dubbo type of thing. It was a case of getting in the car and just going to each of those towns one after the other and dropping in and introducing myself and showing our product. Obviously I was infinitely proud of our product, but it really was a wake-up call of, I remember very distinctly walking into one shop. This retailer has become a good friend in Moree. I could see in his window he had like 6 watches. And I said, "Oh, fantastic. This guy's killing it with our stuff. He's only got 6 left." And I said to Steve, "Oh, Stephen, this is brilliant, mate. You're going so well." I said, "Oh, this is great. You've only got these left." And he goes, "That's all I carry." And suddenly all the wind went out of his sails. I was like, "What?" But instead, I thought, well, there's an opportunity there. If that's all you carry, there's only one way, and that's up. And now he has 2 stores, one in Moree, one in Gundy. We have probably 100 watches at each store, so
yeah, fantastic.
At any one time. So we're a very strong supplier for him and a very strong part of his business these days.
Yeah, so tell me, there'll be a lot of people listening to this podcast who are either taking on a family business. Obviously, it's a dental practice rather than a watchmaking business like yours. But when the young bull and the old bull come together, what happens? Is it an easy marriage, or is there moments of tension?
Great question, mate. It has its moments, and I think for the first 10 years, because I was predominantly out on the road, we coexisted in our business, doing very, very different things in our business. So I was doing a lot of the selling. There were another 2 fellas out on the road with me to cover it, because we turned it into a sort of national brand. We were selling in every state of Australia. Over 300 retailers are working with us these days, ranging our products. So when I was out selling, I was probably away 36 weeks a year. So Dad could go on with basically running the business, and I was kind of selling. But then as my role evolved, I think is probably the only term you could use, it did evolve, and I took on different facets, and marketing became more important to us, and just the relationships and working with some of our bigger clients and all that sort of thing. I was spending more and more time in the office and having more and more influence over it. And that's when I guess we started to clash a little bit, because of, as I said earlier, we both want the same thing. We want our business to do really well, but I'm going to do it the way that I've done it for the last 40-something years, and you're going to do it. And I said, well, that Kodak did it this way for so long, and where's Kodak now? Blockbuster did it this way for so long. We have to keep evolving, and we have to keep changing. And it was that kind of conversation. And it was a very firm arm wrestle over probably 4 years till we sort of got firmly back on the same path and worked together in the same office. And he still has a very distinct role in the production sort of side of our thing. So Dad, with one of the boys that's been with us for like over 30 years, he's a watchmaker as well. So Dad and Cole handle all of our logistics and production process. So to make one watch, we're actually using probably anywhere between 5 and 9 different manufacturers. So when I talk about manufacturers, one will be making a bracelet, a case, a glass, a dial, hands, crown, movement, buckle. So there's a whole gamut of different moving parts, no pun intended, to come into the making of one watch. So to have those logistics have to be dialed up, because from the time we design a watch to the time we deliver the watch, it's up to like 8 to 12 months. So to get all those pieces to come together. So Dad, and he heads up all the quality control team, whereas my sort of role now has to sort of oversee the whole business and have a particular sort of focus on, which is my strength, on our customers, on the design. I enjoyed the designing side of our watch production and being able to design watches, especially like we're working on currently a watch for one of the girls' private schools here in Brisbane for their 90-year celebrations. And to work actually with the school, it's to take ideas and go across to the school and sort of, this is how because it's sending a very loud message about who the school is, this design. So it has to be right. So, yeah, so that's how we kind of get along. But make no mistake, there are certainly times where Dad and I will have a firm arm wrestle about something, and it's best done after 5 o'clock. So, so there's no one caught in the crossfire. That's how kind of it works best in our business, to let each other just do what we do and let each other know what we're doing, and then that sort of thing. We're not one for having a meeting every morning or any of that. We'll normally sit around and have a beer on a Friday together and sort of just reflect on the week and the week coming, what's sort of further down the track. So that keeps both of us involved. But we are still a fairly small organisation, so we can see what each other is up to pretty much all the time.
Yeah, and the thing I like about that is stone sharpens stone, right? Because you might have a good idea that your dad kind of sharpens up for you, or vice versa, and I'm sure you bounce ideas off one another, and I'm sure that there's that collaborative process in there somewhere as well.
You've nailed it, because the ideas come out, and they can come out from anywhere. And you say, I've got this idea about something. What if we did this, or what if we did that? I said, well, that's not a bad idea, but if we did it this way, it could be. And then all the boys sort of start getting involved, and there's a sort of, it just gathers momentum behind something. It can be as small as, we'd like to change the colour of a hand, or, well, if we did it this, we could change the shape of that hand, and that would give it further accent. Or it can be making the watches. There's so much attention to detail, and one change of that detail can actually change the whole look and feel of the entire watch. So it has to be right. So it's when it's sort of done as a team, it seems to work a lot better for us.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, mate, I want to talk about scaling excellence. You spoke just a second ago about the detail of just changing the color of a watch hand, changing the look and feel of the watch. And so quality assurance is obviously going to be a huge part of what you do. Working with different manufacturers and understanding what their QA processes are is going to be huge. But you've got 16 watchmakers, I think you said there, and a couple of apprentices. And when your dad started out and it's just him, how long does it take to grow a watchmaker? Because if you suddenly wanted to ramp up production, let's just hypothetically say another country wanted to distribute your watches or something like that, there's going to be some capacity things you're going to have to deal with in all of that. And it's the same with dentists, right? For us, when we do our work, oftentimes people might want to come see the principal, but of course there's only so many hours in the day and you've only got 2 hands, and you want to be able to give them off to your associate. But we need to be comfortable and confident that the associate's quality assurance, the processes are as good, the techniques are as good, and so on. So I'd love to know what you've done to grow your watchmakers.
I can't believe you're asking me this question, because it's going around in my head right now. We've got a very, very strong interest from another country that would like to start distributing our watches, and that means quite a lot for us to ramp up our production. And I've also got one of my key guys that's been with us for 10 years. He did his apprenticeship with us, and apprentice is a 3-year apprenticeship. But like in any apprenticeship, you're only really getting good at your craft as you're sort of doing it further and further down the track. And I would guess in dentistry, it would be very similar. You only get better by doing it type of thing. So for us, with our watchmakers, we have a process, and there's two very distinct sort of paths that you follow in our organisation. You either move towards the repair side of our business, or you move towards the production side of our business. And the production side of it is a lot more repetition to it, but it still has to be done at the highest level. So every watch is being made. We look at everything with a x5 eyeglass. So it's very close work, like you guys are also used to. We'll reject things that people probably won't see in real life. They'll go to the shop and they won't see it, but we see it, and that's enough. We can use those rejected parts for spare parts and repairing and that sort of thing. But for a brand new watch, it has to be perfect. So Dad has set that tone from day one, and he still heads up the quality control side of our business. So after the watches are made, we have a process where we make the watches and then the retailer will order them. When the order is ready to go out, each piece is checked individually with an eyeglass to make sure the crown works, there's no dust or dirt under the glass, the action's working perfectly, and the back case is locked up, because we make a lot of waterproof watches. Maintaining that water resistance is tantamount to us. So we always, the last step of the checking process is to check the back cases all locked up before the bracelet gets put on, and then the watch can be dispatched to the customer. That is set by Dad. And then to answer your question, how long does it take to grow? For someone to get good, once they move into production sort of side of thing, it's a good couple of years. And we're looking to put somebody on at the moment, and we're grappling with, and this is where I guess you've got to be brave to try something new. We've never had someone in our production that's not a watchmaker. So they've been an apprentice, they've been a watchmaker, and they've come through our processes. But we are ramping up quite strongly at the moment. We probably need to introduce someone to our team that we can just invest 100% of time into teaching them just to be in the production processes. They don't need to know the whys and what fors of how it all works. They just need to know how it all goes together, and to do it in the steps that we do it in, so as we can get the same caliber product out without spending time teaching clocks and teaching mechanics of the watches and teaching them how to repair it. We need to I feel that we need to get somebody in that we can do that repetitive work, but do it to the standard that we need. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, it does. And it gives me actually a follow-up question, if I can, mate, because if you bring this person on and they're someone who's not a watchmaker, in inverted commas, and for the listeners here, I'm doing air quotes as I'm saying that, which is ridiculous. I realize how dumb that is, but anyway. But if you were to bring this person in that's not a watchmaker per se, I guess you would have done the risk analysis on this and thought, what could go right, what could go wrong, and how do we mitigate against all of that? What I'm curious to understand is, does that person have things, I suppose, delegated to them, like the watchmaker oversees the process, and then you might have this particular person work under the directional supervision of the watchmaker? Is that how it works?
Absolutely. It's certainly not just let to cut loose and start running your own race. So the way that there's distinct steps into the watchmaking or the manufacturing of, and there's some simpler steps that we can do that we can delegate to this person to get their skills, get their hand skills up and their speed up. It can be putting the batteries in, like it can be putting the dials on. We have a machine that we cut the stem. So at the heart of every watch, when you undo your winder, that changes the time and the date. So every case is a different size. So we have to cut that stem to a certain length for every different model that we're making. And each watch also can have a different caliber of movement. So with that movement, it also requires a different stem. So it's a repetitive process. We have a machine that they were bought from Switzerland that sort of does the cutting, but you still have to hand load it. So there are different sort of steps that we can skill the person up to get them to a level that can assist the production team, that will then increase their skill base to get them to the point where they can be the most technical part of the watch production is putting the hands on. The hands have to be level and flat. You have to make sure they clear over the indexes on the dial face, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of training to get your hands perfect. And Dad's fanatical on hands, and so all our guys are really, really, really good at hands. That's the last sort of piece in the puzzle of your skill base.
Yeah, so I'm guessing, mate, and without assuming, but I'm guessing you've got a fairly stringent training process that's documented, manuals. So if I was to come in as an apprentice, it's not loosey-goosey. It's a case of, right, Jesse, this is what you're doing first, this is what you're doing next, and so on and so forth. So there's a dedicated training path for these guys. Let's say they're going into production. There is that process in there. You've built the intellectual property assets of your business is what I'm guessing.
There's definitely a process, and that's where this would be stepping out a little bit, because we've grown watchmakers for their apprenticeship. So we teach them different things at different levels in their and then the boys go away to the only watchmaking school left in Australia now is in Sydney, in Ultimo, the tech there. So the boys go down to Sydney. They go down for 4 days every 6 weeks. So and then that training path that they're learning at college, we're also backing it up when they come back to the office or back to the factory. We can then sort of say, oh, what you're doing at college, and we kind of know what's going on at college as well, because we have communications with the head trainer down there, so we know what they're up to. So when they come back, we can be then getting them to redo stuff that they've learned at college, so they can be improving that skill, and then but maintaining their own workload within the organisation as well.
Fantastic. And what about finding talent, finding good people? Because it's a niche. You guys are in a niche, right? As you said, you're the largest and only Australian watchmaker doing this at scale. Is there an easy supply of finding good people, or is it one of those things where you kind of go, oh, sometimes I could just do with another couple of bodies?
That's the thing. You can always do it with one extra, and you can throw more people at it, but
it's got to be the right people, right?
Yeah, true. And it's also because the labour component, labour we're doing this in Australia. So we want to still make our watches to be competitive, but we've got a ginormous labour cost, which we have no problem with, but everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction. So to find those people come in with the perception, I'm going to be a watchmaker. And we had one young fella come and join us, and he thought he was going to be making robotic sort of stuff. And I said, well, that's not it. Well, what a watchmaker is you're a clean car mechanic. It's the same problem-solving skills that you've got to use. If you're problem-solving a car, you're doing a watch. You're looking for fault finding, and then you're activating on that fault, and then you're replacing the component. You're fixing it, you're oiling, putting it back together, and moving on to the next job.
Which is dentistry too, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Well, the problem solving, you're looking for faults, you're looking for things that aren't right, and then you're using that data, you're interpreting that data, and you're then coming up with a treatment plan, in our case, to address that. So it's very similar, and very similar fine motor skills, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And that's when we come talking about this person. If they're not an apprentice, it's all that hand skills that has to be learned. It's something that to be able to hold a pair of tweezers, to be able to use a screwdriver correctly, use the correct screwdriver, work cleanly. You sit at a bench very low to the bench, so you're looking into the watches as you're working on them. It's sort of not natural. It becomes very, very natural. It is all that fine motor skills, as you said. That it's all learned, though. It's absolutely all learned.
Yeah, I think that's the same with dentistry. Most of the stuff that we do is absolutely learned. Mate, you spoke quickly before about the reliance on other providers for componentry. And in dentistry, we rely on others as well. We'll rely on our dental technicians particularly to make things for us. So Mrs. Smith comes in for a crown, we'll do the clinical work, but the crown is usually made off-site. Sometimes it's made on-site with a CAD/CAM milling process, but traditionally it's made off-site by a technician. I wanted to ask you around some of the challenges in dealing with suppliers, because I imagine if you've been in business for 1971, which is a vintage year, of course, you would have had, I assume, some hiccups with suppliers along the way. How did you approach those conversations, and how did you deal with that?
We've been very lucky. Dad found incredible suppliers very early on in our piece. The watch industry is, we call it the small village. It's a very small village, and all the big brands around the world basically are following the same processes that we do. Some brands, and there's only a few, are doing everything in-house. Otherwise, they're outsourcing to different component makers, just like we are. We've been lucky enough to crack into some of that high echelon component makers from day one. So we're using the same components as some of the big Swiss brands. And it's interesting when you go to the factories and you can sort of see, oh, well, there's the next dials going for Amiga, or there's the next sort of things for Tag Heuer. And it's quite cool to know that our stuff is being produced in that same four walls and is going to be at that same caliber level. But that said, there is still the challenge to maintain. You can't have all your eggs in one basket, so you have to have a couple of different case makers, a couple of different dial makers, just in case one starts to slow. We need to be able to maintain our continuity of supply, and we do that by finding a couple of different people. So I'll always go to the trade fairs in Switzerland and in Hong Kong to just keep meeting new people. And it's not that you need to do business with them straight away, but there's also that network of potential suppliers that you might have to bring off the bench if something goes awry with your current crop, So we are always on the lookout, and we never sort of substitute quality for price. So it's not a case that we're running around looking for different suppliers that's going to do it 2 cents cheaper. That to us is not the way forward. We'd rather, if we're having an issue with a supplier, we like to work with people for a very long time, and then you can work through any hiccups that might come along. If they've got a problem with plating or a problem with stamping or something, we can sort of say, well, we can see what's going on. How can we work together on this to get us back on track? So relationship is extremely important to Dad and myself,
A relationship is the key to business, in my view, mate. You're in a service business, you're manufacturing and service. We're definitely in a service business. So everything we do is about relationships. And I wrote this book, mate. It was about retaining patients. And I gave the manuscript to a mate of mine just to read, and he goes, so it's a book about relationships. And I went, yeah, pretty much. That's it. You guys have been around for a long, long time. We all remember the 1990s with the recession we had to have and all of the GFCs and all those sorts of things. I wanted to ask you, when you're building a premium brand and the economy takes a nosedive, how do you get through that? And is there a bit of a holding on white knuckle ride for you guys and all of that, or is it, oh my goodness, we got this? What's your contingency plan? Do you kind of have things up your sleeve, or how do you get through that?
There's certainly been some strong growth times and some tough times. We have a strong, a broad regional footprint, and so that we're affected by drought, and drought's biting really hard now with our Western New South clients. Customers our retailers just don't have the customers coming in through their front door saying, well, it's my wife's birthday, I want to buy her a $500 watch type of thing. So we've got to be very mindful of what's going on with our retailers, and actually, and I say it to our sales guys, I said, we're more than reps. We're bringing enthusiasm to the store when we call. If every person that's walked into the shop for the last 2 weeks has gone, oh, gee, it's dry at home, I'm feeding my cows, or I'm going to have to get rid of them, or can't plant, so all this doom and gloom is coming in through the front door. It's up to us to bring some enthusiasm to the retailer and sort of buck them up a little bit, It's sort of like, yeah, we can see that. And do you remember when this happened? Or we've designed this watch. It's going to fit a price point that might be able to help through this sort of time. So we're very, very mindful of our retailers, and that back to that relationship it's about giving them the energy to sort of keep going, because if they give up and then we give up, then it's all gone. It's important for us to maintain our energy, and even if things are a bit lean, that was what was going on 4 or 5 years ago for us. It sort of flattened out, after the mining boom came off and all that sort of thing was affecting people's purchasing habits. Smartwatches were taking off, all that sort of thing. We just had to lift our game. We had to lift to that new challenge. And I think, as I said right at the start, it's that not giving up sort of attitude that has armed us with the ability to kind of keep going.
Yeah, and well done to you guys. 47 years of unbroken watchmaking is fantastic, and something you guys should justifiably be really proud of. Hey, mate, as we wrap up today, firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and hang with us. You're an incredibly generous bloke, and obviously we had the opportunity to catch up a little while last week or so. If you were to leave our audience with a couple little things that have served you well in your business life, obviously one is going to be don't give up and persevere. But what would be one or two other things that you'd like to leave the listeners with as they go about their own business journey? Because there's so many similarities between your business and ours, mate, in terms of building something of high quality. It takes precision, takes time. You've got all these other bits happening. So what would be your one or two key pieces of wisdom you'd like to leave the audience with?
You've got to maintain your relevance. So we've got to stay relevant to the market. We can't start creating things that no one wants to wear. We've got to keep that relevance of what's going on in the fashion world and what the modern consumer is looking for. We've tapped into a market of, we call it functional fashion. So it's making waterproof watches for men and women, but mainly women, that look $1 million, but they can wear them to the beach if they want to, So it's that relevance of what the modern consumer is doing, I think is important. It's also that probably to be open to doing things in a new way. And that's where, like I said earlier, with Dad sort of being open to sort of trying things. Sometimes you have to warm up to them, but I think you do need to grow with your business in new directions and just try new things, as we were discussing about potentially putting on a new tech, for want of a better word, into our organisation.
Mate, that's fantastic. So I really love those key points. Grant, mate, thank you. I'm so chuffed to have had you on our show today, and I'm super chuffed to have seen the success of Adina watches over such a long period of time, but particularly over the last decade or so. I see things coming through my newsfeed, and no wonder you guys are kicking some goals. You're doing some terrific work, mate. So from all of us here, we salute you. Well done, mate. It's fantastic work.
A pleasure being with you. I really enjoyed it. It's a labour of love. It has its ups and downs, but it's something that we're super proud of. So it was nice to be able to sort of share it with you and the group.
Thanks, mate. You're a champ.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessegreen.com/savvydentist.